Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sunny Wasserman back for the 265th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom gathering. We got a ton today. We're starting off with 40 people. We're starting off with the great Andrea Miller live from Virginia, where she is waving the triumphant flag of electoral capability. We're expecting Rodney Sadler to join us, who is won his primary for the North Carolina House of Representatives. We also got HOWIE HAWKINS from the Green Party, and we have Chris from all the way from Ukraine. So our first hour, we're going to start with the I don't know whether to call it bad news or what on the Voting Rights Act and the ability of people like, well, there are no other people like Andrea Miller to turn it into victory for progressives. Howie is going to talk to us about various ways to deal with it, and Chris is going to tell us not only Chris is a greatly brilliant character here. He's going to be introduced by Maya Reese in detail, but with a history of Pacifica and a deep knowledge on, even though he's in Ukraine, about the Voting Rights Act and how it affects us here in the United States. So we're going to have a deep dive on this in the first hour. We're going to have a short report, and then at the big break of the first hour to the second from Lynn Feinerman about some great progress with a new Zoom on women's rights and the horrific rape culture that comes with the age of Trump. And then the second hour, we're going to be introduced by the great KARL GROSSMAN to the world, which I can barely say, but it is a reality now, of nukes in space, the idea of shooting atomic reactors through our atmosphere and into long-term exploration. I can't even begin to describe the insanity of what's involved in seconding that notion will be KEVIN KAMPS live from Kalamazoo, Michigan, who's going to update us on the insanity surrounding the Palisades reactor, which I am telling you right now will never restart, and the various attempts to surround it with these silly mythological ripoffs called SMRs, or small modular reactors. Utterly insane. We're joined by the great Rodney Sadler, who will congratulate on his victory in the primary there. But we're going to start with Andrea Miller. Rodney, great to have you with us. So for our first hour, we got Andrea, Rodney, Chris, and Howie Hawkins to dissect the Voting Rights Act, give us the prognosis for what's happening in 26, and then a brief report from Ukraine about, I had somebody at lunch earlier last week give me 100 to 1 odds that Russia was going to conquer Ukraine. So if anybody wants to start a pool with me and get really, really rich, I'll take that bet any day of the week, and we will visit those prospects going forward. But to waste no further time, Andrea Miller, you are one of the great grassroots election theorists and practitioners in our country today. You have a belt with notches in it from Virginia, as does Rodney Sadler now from North Carolina. But let's start off for Andrea Miller. Tell us about the Voting Rights Act and tell us about what's going to happen now going forward into the 2026 midterm elections, which, by the way, will happen. I'm going to tell you right now, Donald Trump will not, whether he'd like to or not, will not be able to cancel the 26 elections. The question is, what shape will they take? And no one can talk to us better about that than Andrea Miller and then Rodney Sadler. So please, Andrea, go ahead.
Was going to
You're
talk
muted.
about something
Sorry.
totally different. I was going to talk about the Virginia victory and then
Yes.
what we were going to do. But when we look at 2020, 6, realistically, we have a tremendous opportunity in the Southeast. But right now, the brilliant party that we have is not really planning on making any significant investments in the Southeast. Georgia does not have a single state on red to blue. I think there might be a couple of districts in Texas. So, yes, there's going to be an election. Let's see if people get smart enough to do what they need to do, and that is turn out, turn out, turn out. Elections are won by those who show up. It's not won by those who complain, and it's not won by those who decide to stay at home, because there are no perfect candidates. Now, one of the things that we do in Virginia is we generally elect the people that we want. And one of the ways that we do that is we do that with a wonderful grassroots coalition. And so we are getting the coalitions back together in Georgia and in North Carolina. So while everybody is busy looking at the federal elections, those states are basically, and even Texas, are within one election of taking control of their state house. And you know what? Virginia really wasn't worried by Calais. We knew it was coming, but we weren't worried about it because we have control of our state house. Our state house is working to redistrict and produce 4 new Democratic seats. One of the lies that the Republicans told was that it was going to weaken our 2 majority minority districts. And we were like, yeah. So Bobby Scott, when he has an election and he gives away all of his campaign staff to a newer candidate that really needs it, he's only going to win with 64% of the vote rather than 68. I don't really think Bobby cares. So very, 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 very interesting. What we are going to see from the other side, we are going to see disinformation times 100. In Virginia, they elevated it to an art form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to only give you about 5 minutes of this presentation. I want to show you the incredible lying campaign. All right, now I mentioned Virginia's got 11 congressional districts. We plan to go 10-1. Now, this is what the Republicans or conservatives, whatever you want to call them, ran against the Black community. It was a lie after lies after lies. So there are nearly 1 million Black voters in Virginia. Most Black voters got 3 to 5 of these lying mailers. And when our phone banks had Governor Spanberger, President Obama, and the NAACP encouraged you to vote yes. What did they do? They took all of our trusted messengers, stuck them on flyers, and said, oh, they're totally against gerrymandering. Yes, this was when you were trying to break up majority minority districts. Yes, they were against that gerrymandering, but they just totally took it out of context. And what was so incredibly delighted, all right, and that's the NAACP. And you can see President Obama, Governor Spanberger say vote yes. What happened was all of our, most of our big districts in Virginia voted yes. And the reason we ultimately won in Virginia was the Black vote. So we were able to do outreach to 718,000 Black voters in Virginia. And according to the New York Times, it was the Black vote that put it up for. Now, in none of our southern states, and in Georgia, where 33% of the registered voter electorate is Black, in none of our southern states are we going to see significant or targeted outreach to Black voters by the party or most of the candidates, because most people don't really know how to use their pathetic voter file van. So they look for Democrats. Black voters, Hispanic voters no longer register as Democrats. So if you're looking for Democrats, people who actually have a D, you're not going to find most Black voters or most Hispanic voters. So you're going to end up going for the Clinton white suburban voters who are possibly going to vote for you this year and possibly not. So that's kind of where we are. As I said, we're going to be targeting Georgia, North Carolina, Alabama, because they've got a strong coalition on the ground. And we're looking at Texas to take their state houses. If we have their state house, then you know what? Even if they have a Republican governor, they need the state house to redraw the lines. We can basically stop them from their mischief.
Now, Andrea, not to be presumptuous, what about the Senate seat, the U.S. Senate seat in Mississippi? I have seen stuff in the Times
Yeah,
claiming that it might be in play.
theoretically, it would be, but again, the party's not going to reach out to the 40% Black voting electorate down there. So,
Oh my God. All right. So again, we are nonpartisan here, but Andrea Miller can speak her piece, and she's talking about organizing. How is the ground game for the Senate race in North Carolina and in Georgia? I think most people are very strongly focused on those.
the ground game in Georgia is looking very, 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 very strong. In 2018, 2020, working with Richard Rose and Ray, we built the coalition Georgia Team Unity. In 2024, we worked on building the equivalent in North Carolina, Team Unity. And that was basically organizing the Black groups who could reach out to Black voters. And what delighted me in North Carolina was they were like, hey, can we go get our Latino brothers? And say, yeah, come on, bring them in, bring them in. And so we all came together, and it was really, really interesting when you look at the results in North Carolina. It was in some ways strange. Harris lost, but at the top of the ticket, basically, we won. It was very, very interesting. So this year, since there's Senate and it's a guy that was a very popular governor, he will probably win. John Ossoff in Georgia is the incumbent, and John Ossoff believes in the grassroots. So that could be very good. Hello, Reverend Rodney. Hello. Love
Okay.
and
Well,
kisses.
well, we're going to go to Mike Hirsch, actually, to introduce Reverend Rodney. Rodney, I see you're wearing your Joe Biden sunglasses, but let's let Mike Hirsch introduce you. Mike, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sonny. A lot of us know and love Rodney Sadler, but for anybody who doesn't, Rodney is an absolutely brilliant man. He's a caring man. He's incredibly compassionate, and he leads by example. He's the kind of person who inspires people through his quiet insistence on being ethical and moral. He cares about every living human being, and he walks the walk that Jesus walked, and he single-handedly is an answer to all of the right-wing, bigoted, evangelical people who take the name of Jesus in vain. He's an example of everybody. And the fact that he could defeat a kind of do nothing or do the wrong thing Democratic incumbent in a head-to-head primary shows that if we try, we can win with faith and perseverance. We will triumph, we will overcome. And I'm so honored to welcome my dear friend, Rodney Sadler.
All right, Rodney, I don't know if you can live up to that kind of an introduction. We got 78 people sitting on the edge of their chairs or the edge of their pews, and we're waiting to hear from you. So go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. That was a wonderful introduction. Andrea, it's always wonderful to be on any call with you. And Brother Wasserman, I'm honored to be able to speak to people on your show today.
Well, thank you
Let
so
me
much.
just start
It's a
off by
great group.
saying thank you so much, because I know people here on the line today helped our campaign to win the victory in North Carolina. And I believe that the recipe for victory is great messaging and constant commitment. When we bring together effective coalitions of progressive thinkers, we bring together unions, we bring together just people who have been disappointed with the system, but give them something to vote for, we can change every election in this country. And that's what I want to see. As we're moving towards this next election cycle in November, I want us to seek to press full court in districts that people say we can't win, because I think we can win them. And we've got secret weapons that are out there that are really helping us in this campaign. And maybe I should say they're not so secret weapons, because we're looking at Andrea Miller right here, and her recipe for how do we reach people who have been left out of the polls, left out of the outreach campaigns, and bring them into the fold. That's the right recipe for today. We need to make sure that we're getting new people to the polls. If you don't know, and I'm grateful for my team, I didn't win a victory, we won a victory. And my team was remarkable in part because they did not overlook anyone. We had coalitions that came together, coalitions that were unusual. We had coalitions that were Muslim targeted, coalitions that were international minority community targeted, coalitions that were from women's groups and educators and unions. And they all came together, worked together to effectuate change. In the end, in a three-way primary, I was able to pull out 69.96% of the vote.
Jeez.
So basically 70% of the vote. And the other two candidates split the remaining 30%. The incumbent only took 22% of the overall vote. And in part, the way that we did it was because we increased voter turnout. We increased it by 50%. So we won by a margin that was more than the people that voted in our last primary election. So we have that full court press mentality. If we keep that going across the South, across the West, across the East, just everywhere, you'd be surprised at who turns Democrat in the South. I mean, excuse me, in November. One other thing I really want to say is that we can't take anything for granted. We can't think about a single group, a single section of the country as irrelevant or impossible to get. So many people today are disappointed in what's going on in Washington. So many people are disappointed in what's going on in their own states and local government. And the more we take the time to get to know what those issues are, spend time talking about creative solutions, and then work towards effective strategies, outreach campaigns, ground games, the more victories we will see come November. So that's where I'll start off today, just by saying that this is possible. But let me say one other thing before we go.
Well, first tell us, Rodney, you are headed, remember, we're nonpartisan.
Yes. Yes.
We want to congratulate you on your grassroots victory. Where are you? You are headed now to the North Carolina legislature. Is that correct?
Yes, North Carolina General Assembly to the House District 106.
And
And I'm headed there with all my friends because we want to co-govern and change the way that governance is done in the state of North Carolina. We want to govern by love. And when I say we want a love-focused government, it means we want to have things like, oh, a living wage and affordable housing and making sure that we have access to health care that we all can afford. We want to make sure that we're protecting our environment. We want to make sure that everyone has access to voter rights in a state that has been overly gerrymandered for far too long. And we can bring about this change. We are empowered and realize our agency and are eager to bring about this change today.
excellent. Let's go to Ruth Strauss. We have 80 plus people on, Ruth, and then I want to have Myla Reeson introduce Chris, who's in Ukraine. It's not often you have a local call here with somebody from far away as Ukraine, but for good reason. And then we'll go to Howie Hawkins, and then we'll come back to you, Andrea, please. And we want to talk, we want to segue into a discussion of the Voting Rights Act and what the Supreme Court has now done and how that's going to impact campaigning going forward. First, I want to introduce our good medical doctor from Alabama, Ruth Strauss. Ruth, did you want to say something? Then we'll...
Hey, Andrea. I have a couple of things. First of all, of course, our first priority should be working for you and donating to you, but but I also have another plug, and that is I heard Raphael Warnock this past weekend talking about the NAACP Legal Defense Fund as one place to give, and then Mark Elias has sued and successfully in some cases, and I have joined whatever forces he has. But I wanted to know what you thought about that. And I'm just going to make one cynical comment. I think this mifepristone thing was a way of them trying to dig out from under, this horrible voting, thing. And if you all don't see me again, it's because I wrote the Supreme Court a postcard about how awful they are. Okay, thanks. What do you think about NAACP and Mark Elias after we donate?
Oh, Andrea, got to unmute.
I've worked with a legal defense fund from the NAACP, and they are absolutely marvelous. Mark Alliance lost a case for me in Virginia in 2017 that my cat could have won. So I'm really glad to see that apparently he and his team are actually paying attention to laws in the state. What he did was, we have our state elections in odd numbered years. He took a challenge to a state election to federal court. I think that judge is still laughing.
Yeah, well, we've had our own experiences with Mark Elias dating back to Ohio 2004 when he basically told us to take a hike, and we did. So, Rodney Sadler, you want to jump in? And then Myla Reeson, if you'll introduce Chris Sampson, that would be great. Mike Hurst, did you want to say something quickly in between here?
Yeah, I wanted to quickly say that a lot of people will say things like, if voting mattered, they wouldn't let you do it. But my retort to that is, if voting didn't matter, why would they try so hard to keep us from doing it?
Well, also, in the past couple of weeks, there has been a new verb introduced into the vocabulary, which is Orban. We have had democracy Orbaned in Hungary, and in an election where we had basically a dictator for what, 12, 16 years, and he lost against all odds. How does an entrenched dictator after 16 years lose an election? That's really an amazing situation. Myra Reeson, do you want to introduce Chris, who's in Ukraine, another place that's under fire?
I do, and I'd like to answer that question too. I think that the reason that Orban was, they were able to pull off unseating him had in large part was due to the fact that they have hand counted ballots that are not tabulated by ES&S machines and other hackable tabulation machines. And I think that that was a big factor. At any rate, I'm so honored to introduce CHRIS SAMPSON, all the way from Ukraine. And I wish I could provide as flowery and sufficient an introduction as Mike Hirsch did for his honored guest. But let me just say that it's my understanding, Chris, that you've been in Ukraine for 2 years now.
No. I've been here since January 2022. I was here before the full scale started.
Wow.
So
Over 4 years.
So
you were there to welcome Putin's troops into Ukraine, basically.
I was there to see the fresh Molotov cocktail mixing from the Babusi, who are experts in all things.
Okay, we won't go there, but go ahead, Nyla.
I had that wrong. So let me just say that Chris is going to join us in this discussion about the Voting Rights Act being gutted. And then after that discussion, we're going to hear about your work in Ukraine. And I know that you're working on a documentary, and you can kind of provide.
Well, let's visit the Voting Rights Act, Chris, and then we'll let Howie chime in, go to Andrea, and Rodney again, and then we'll go back to Ukraine. So tell us about the Voting Rights Act and your take on that, please.
Well, first off, thank you everyone for what you're doing. As an American who deals with full-scale war, I can't take my fingers off the pulse of America. I'm still a counterterrorism expert of America's extreme right wing and what Donald Trump did. I'm still friends with the former Capitol police officers. I'm still friends with Stuart Rhodes' son. I'm still friends with a lot of people that defined all the life I had before I came here. So there's that. And one of the things that never leaves me, you see what I look like. In 2012 and 2013,
our radio audience doesn't. You look like a 1958 beatnik.
I always say I look like Adam from Mythbusters, even though I'm like Stokely Carmichael inside.
Right.
It's true. So I was raised in Houston's Black Community and Shape Center with Lloyd Parker and all the great legends of essentially the old guard. And I miss our great champion, Sheila Jackson Lee, who was my friend. And one of the things that I think is misunderstood about the situation in Texas, not by you guys, you're savvy, but that my vote was canceled twice in 2012 and 2013. Now, the reason why it was canceled is because I intentionally let my state ID, I'm a cyclist, expire because it's an ID. It's not permission to drive or anything. It's just an ID. And I did it because I knew what the system was going to be. Now, it was the same address I'd been in at the same residence I had been registered in the entire time. Everything was legit, right? And I'm actually I'm part of the class action lawsuit that Mark Vesey launched against the state of Texas. And then actually we did win. We did win that case at its time. Now, the reason why I mention it is because you guys are obviously very in the now of where the current thing is with the Supreme Court. But we have so many sort of average voters who do not understand that they too are just as likely to be disenfranchised. And I did this on purpose, meaning I knew what the system would do. Everything I did was obviously legal, but I did it to prove that the system was rigged against minority voters, against basically poor people in my area of East Side Houston. And I finished the process, if you will, to prove what it would do, because the people at the voting precinct, they knew me. They knew I had a press badge. They knew me on the radio. I was a known thing. And they're like, but I mean, it's him. He has this and this. And they went down the whole checklist. I had everything I needed, except the date didn't match the required, right? And no one told me, come back and score my vote. I didn't get anything except for your vote doesn't count. So my message is take nothing for granted in your state. Make sure that if there is a process, you find out what that process is for shoring up your vote. Make sure you find out from before you go to the ballot box, before you show up at the precinct, all of that process. Know the process very well. Do like I did to the best of my ability at that time. Know all the moving parts and start advising other people around it. And number two, one of the things that most frustrates me about Americans being here in Ukraine is I know a lot of people who have gone through, shall we say, way too much to understand and live out independence. And when I think of things like no kings as being every few weeks or every couple of months, I feel like the country that I grew up in is gone. Like, not in a good way either, because it's still hoping someone else will do the thing. Someone else will go solve it. Or what I say is a desire for the anti-Trump, the next Obama, whoever it's going to be, right? And I think that that's where we're screwing ourselves, and more importantly, is that we're screwing those who count on us to get a change that's required right now. I mean, like a change that is truly historic if we can pull it off. And so Mila mentioned what happened in Hungary, and I'm going to adjust what she said by just a little bit, and not to discount what she offered. But what Peter McGarr did was very different and very important for us, I think, to understand in current context of American propaganda model. And I'm aiming at CNN and MSNBC, et cetera. There's a few others. But he knew that the process in Hungary had been rigged in favor of Viktor Orban. So he went around the whole thing. He went out to the villages and he did the ground game that I said was the difference between what Al Gore did in 2000 and what Obama did in 2008. Like, I literally got skewered for all those years when I go, no. What Al Gore didn't do is, oh, you don't understand. Like, I do understand. Hello, I do understand. I had proposed basically the 50-state campaign strategy. In other words, like you guys just said, let no area that you can go talk to, I don't care how red the district is, go over and talk to them like our great friend Bernie Sanders would do, like go out in Kansas somewhere. And let me tell you something. The thing is that the 1% of the 1% in Kansas always is still 1%, no matter where you go. And this is what's lost in the monarchy of the Democratic Party that also has to be challenged internally, is that, stop what I know to be the inner monarchy, if you will. I've seen too many good people go run for office in the Democratic Party who are veterans or something. They just get railroaded from an inner system that does not want them. And that translates to the rest of us who are independent thinkers, who, wind up like I see Howie's here. So like someone who will go to Green Party or to another party is that doesn't speak to that interest. Instead, it sort of says, well, then fine, go over there, go over to that party. That's a terrible way of trying to get a date, if you will. And I think that that's where we're at with that.
Sonny, I think you're muted. We have Elizabeth Muller on stack.
Thank you.
And I also
Well,
want to
let's get
remind
Howie.
everybody.
Let's get
Yeah.
Howie, and then we'll get Elizabeth, and we'll go back to Andrea and Rodney. How's that sound?
Sounds good. And a quick reminder, we're talking about the Democratic Party, but we are nonpartisan on this Zoom. So,
Right. Well,
take-
I would guess if you added up the minutes, we've hammered the Democrats substantially more than the Republicans on this. Certainly when it comes to stolen elections. And I am not a member of the Mark Elias fan club. That's for sure. Leave it at that. Okay.
And I just
let's
wanted to mention the name in terms of veterans who were attempted to be railroaded by the Democratic insiders. Graham Plattner triumphed over that effort.
Yes, Graham Plattner. I'm just praying that Graham Plattner does not turn into another John Fetterman. So let's
Yeah, he's vowed not to. He said that Fetterman is the bane of his existence. So
they seem to have a similar style sense, but other than
yeah, well, you can't always judge a book by its
Right.
cover, I guess.
Okay, so Howie Hawkins has been the presidential candidate of the Green Party, and a great dude, and been with us a long time, and has a couple things to say about the Voting Rights Act, and what it means for campaigning going forward. Howie?
Yeah, I think after the Supreme Court gutted race-based districting, majority minority districts, it's time to go back and remember what Lanny Guinier was talking about decades ago. And she called for proportional representation. Now, you may remember Bill Clinton appointed her to be the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. And then the Wall Street Journal started screaming that she was the quota queen. And Clinton dropped her like a hot potato. And the irony of that was she considered majority minority districts a quota ceiling for Black representation and power. And that's why she advocated for proportional representation, which is also relevant to this big redistricting fight right now. Because if you're doing proportional representation from multi-member districts, it doesn't matter where the district lines are drawn, because every political viewpoint will get its fair share of representation and power. So I think it's, that's got to be our response. And there's a bill that, has been sitting in the House. It's sponsored by Don Beyer and has co-sponsors, only 6 of them: Jamie Raskin, Scott Peters, Jim McGovern, Ro Khanna, Joe Neguse, and Rashida Tlaib. I think it's time for us to push those people to push that bill. And I think I'll just leave it there. I think this is
Does the bill, Howie, does the bill have a number?
Yeah, it's HR 4632. It's called the
Okay.
Fair Representation Act. I'll put that in the chat. And I'll put some articles that, make the case for proportional representation, as opposed to trying to stick with winner-take-all single-member districts, which inherently underrepresent minorities. Ethnic minorities, political minorities, anybody who's a minority in their district. And you have to remember, back in the 90s, Newt Gingrich and them were big on majority minority districts because it concentrated the Democratic vote in a smaller number of districts. And so the Democrats lost a lot of seats. And that's how Gingrich got a majority House for the first time, since Roosevelt? I mean, it was decades. So I think we need to look at that and start, making a real push for proportional representation. So I'll drop those things in the chat, and but that's what I think we need to think about.
Howie, you're always a breath of fresh air. Let's get to Elizabeth, and then we'll go back to Andrea Miller and Rodney Sadler. Elizabeth Mueller.
Hi. I got an email today that talks about the post office and mail-in ballots. And this is what it said.
Well, here, Elizabeth, you're giving us a big echo, and I'm glad you raised that. Can you fix it and come back?
The echo?
Yeah, it's not going to work for us. You got to.
Yeah, it sounds like Lou Gehrig's farewell. at
You may
Yankee
have a phone on or something else. But let me just say that I have mentioned, and I'm dead serious, that mail-in ballots, we may not have a post office. And I think the reason that, and with mail-in ballots, it's sort of mail in and pray that your ballot is actually going to get there. And of course, simultaneously, they're dropping drop-off boxes. So how you can get, if you don't have drop-off boxes, and if the post office isn't functioning, how are we going to send in ballots? It's a question that's really
You can't even date stamp it.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth?
You can't take it to the post office to date stamp it.
Right. Another game they're playing. I mean,
Hey,
people are
Sonny, this is real important. With the problem with mail-in votes is that you lose custody of your ballot. And Andrea does a great job of advising people on how to make sure, because if somebody gets a custody of your vote, they can see how you're voting and decide that your signature is wonky, or they just don't like the looks of it, or the postmark isn't the way they want it, and marginalize your vote, throw it out, and make it a provisional vote, or make it so it's not allowed at all. Voting does require effort, and it requires showing up. And Andrea, if you wanted to just piggyback on that, give your advice.
Elizabeth, thank you for raising those issues. I'm sorry for the echo, but I think we heard everything you had to say twice, and it was well taken. Andrea, if you can jump in and also discuss the impact of this Supreme Court decision and how you think it does. I mean, Howie raised some great points, as he always does. Let's take it from there. Thank you, Andrea.
There's 2 steps. Number one, we've got a lot of the states in the Southeast that are going to redistrict, including Virginia. It's just Virginia is going toward the Democrats. What we have to look at is if we do a good job turning out our voters of color, our Black voters, our Hispanic voters, our AAPI, and our Native American voters, who for the most part are not in anybody's voter file, let's figure that one out, then we actually stand a chance of, as I said, winning state houses and winning other statewide races. But we cannot do the same old stupid thing we do virtually every election, where we are still in the Bill Clinton mentality of we're going after that white suburban unicorn. Now, in this election, since so many people have been hurt, we might get some pleasant surprises. I say, let's go where you're 90% sure if you can get a Black voter in the South to vote, you're 90% sure which direction they're going in.
Well, it's interesting because there's a big discussion now of be careful what you wish for, because the Republicans in Texas have redistricted on the presumption that the Hispanic vote is going to go their way. And
It is known as
shaking their head.
a fantasy or delusion. It's like, have you not seen or heard your own rhetoric?
Right.
Yeah.
I do want to say you did mention the word indigenous, and I just can't resist saying today that there was a story that in building the wall, the Trump regime has destroyed in the last day a major sacred Native American artifact, and nothing really, rips me up. I just watched a two-part documentary on Netflix, which is actually quite good, on Sitting Bull. So I've had immersion in with the indigenous issues, and such as it is in the last couple of days. And this is absolutely infuriating. How they get away with destroying a major Native American sacred artifact to build this wall is just beyond the beyond. So, Rodney, in North
Yeah.
Carolina, what is happening with redistricting in terms of the gutting of the Voting Rights Act? What impacts do you see? And then we'll go to Chris and back to Howie.
Well, I think that one of the things that they've tried to do in the state is to disempower progressive voters, no matter where they are in our state. They've utilized every tool that they could to re-gerrymander. And again, the people don't get to choose their elected officials. The elected officials get to choose the people they want to vote for them. They've most recently gotten rid of one progressive district and made sure that they have a 11 to 4, 11 to 3 advantage in our congressional districts. And we had to sit there and watch that happen. This is why this turnout this fall is so significant. We've got to begin to overcome the lead that has been had by our opposition groups for far too long. We've got to get rid of these extremists and put in people who will make decisions that favor the people for once in a long time. Since 2012, we've lost the ability to figure out what's going on in our state. And I just wanted to comment on that larger comment about the larger issue about what's going on with the Supreme Court ruling. I am not at all surprised by the Supreme Court ruling. I'm not at all surprised by the twisted logic that they use to come up with it. I think they're going to try to do anything they can to undermine the ability of people to vote, particularly people who are Black and brown, particularly people who are usually disenfranchised. They have used the tactics that I was just on a civil rights tour and realized that they're using the same tactics, in essence, that were used in the Jim Crow era. They're trying to revive those, give them a pretty new name, and use them again. We have to recognize it's the same fight. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to let other people who are out there who've not been invited to the table, immigrant communities, Latinx communities, Muslim communities, recognize that this playbook that they're using against them is the same one that they use against Black and brown folks. We need to form larger coalitions, and we need to bring those people who have been ignored in these elections into the fray fully, help them to realize that they have the power to change it, and that their natural alliance isn't with the current power structure. Their natural alliances are with other people who are being disenfranchised and disempowered in the larger system. The more that we can do that, the more likely it is that we're going to have victories as we go forward. And one of the things that they're going to kind of try to keep doing is try to change the ability of people to get access to the polls. Everything that they've done so far does not keep people from going to the polls. It might make it more inconvenient. They take the voting districts out of your community. It might make it more difficult to win in local elections and in the House of Representatives, but we can still turn out larger numbers. We can still increase the ability to do it. And I think that our biggest asset, as we look at the way that they're trying to jury rig the rules, is motivation. The more that we can motivate the electorate to get out there, the more that we can motivate new people to come to the table, the more that we can give something that draws people, a vision of the kind of government that we want to see, the more likely it is that we're going to have great victories come in the future. So I really want to protect voting rights for everybody, but in order to protect them, we need to change our current legislating bodies across the country, and then begin to work towards the kind of just and equitable America that we all hold dear.
Beautifully
Thank you
stated.
so much. And I'm going to have to run right now, but I definitely wanted to get in
Okay.
and say that before I go. Thank you all so much. Thank you for your work. Keep doing it, Andrea. You know I love you dearly, and thank you
Okay,
for all that work you did. God bless.
and Rodney, thank you for your work with Joel Siegel. We really
Oh, my
appreciate
brother.
it. Yeah, give
I
him our
love my
love,
brother.
please.
We will always take care of Joel.
Well, give him our love, please.
Certainly
Okay.
will do that.
Okay. Thank you, Rodney. We appreciate it. Steve Caruso, Lynn Fireman, and then we'll go back to Chris and Howie, and then back to Andrea. Steve,
You
I mean,
know, the
he's
things
going
we
to
have,
stay. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. The things we have to keep in mind is, are they going to take and control the ballots after the election? We have the electronic voting machines that have been error proven that the votes are missing, 700,000 votes here, 700 there. This will hold on Substack is asking people to write their secretaries of state or their reps to make sure that they are doing due diligence on this. This is the currency of democracy, which we have failed in the last election, and we have to make sure that there's no way that they can get their fingers under the label of democracy and peel it off.
Hey, that's very well stated, Steve. Thank you. And of course, Steve is in Ohio, where we passed count them, two statewide referenda to fix the districting. In Ohio, we had a Supreme Court decision, and nonetheless, the legislature just has rode over everything in Ohio. Is as badly gerrymandered as it ever was. It's infuriating beyond belief. Lynn Feinerman, then we're going to go to Chris and Howie and back to Andrea. Lynn Feinerman, please.
Yeah, hi. I was beginning to think I was sounding like a broken record even to myself, but Steve has brought up the issue that is of deep concern to me, and I say it again and again. Leyendecker, Liberty Vote, Riverside County, 45,000 ghost ballots that had no voters behind them. We are not paying enough attention. And when Mila brought up that the reason why Orban was defeated was paper ballots and hand-marked paper ballots, I am wondering if there's any way that we can get something going nationwide to demand that and to sideline what I fear will happen when a group like Scott Leyendeckers Liberty Vote, which bought Dominion voting systems, gets desperate enough. Thank you.
Thank you. And the big difference in 2020 was after all those years after Ohio 2004, we did get hand-marked paper ballots. And in many cases, we did have digital scanning as advocated by John Brakey on these calls. And, it made a difference. Can we get back to that? It's going to be a real struggle. but to have credible elections, and well, let's put it this way: if they can do it in Hungary after all those years of Orban, hopefully we can do it here. And believe me, that's taken seriously. Chris Sampson, Howie Hawkins. We'll go back to Andrea Miller. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to stay in the Hungary model for a minute, like I said about Peter Magyar's response, because I tracked a lot of what he did in particular, especially since, the Trump campaign was painting him as this woke dude. I wish. No, he's actually from the same party, basically same philosophical cut of Orban in certain ways. And I think that was important to understanding what happened there, because he could speak in the same language that Orban had been trying to appeal. But the difference was, and again, this is why I invoked Bernie earlier, is that he went to the areas that Orban did not bother with. Orban had took it for granted that he had everything. He had it all covered. But Magyar used a 2-year campaigning strategy. That's the big deal that people have to understand about what he did. And it's also a smaller country. I'm in Ukraine. My ability to get across this country is pretty good. It's the size of Texas. Campaigning, if I only had to win office in the United States by campaigning only in one state, that would be great. But obviously, America is very big. So,
my
go
buddy,
ahead. Yeah.
I got to ask you this question. My buddy Dave Solomon has mentioned that Magyar isn't all that much different politically from Orban. Is that the case?
Correct. He's basically what I would call center right. And this is why it was interesting to watch the arguments go down, because from the Kremlin and from the Trump mouthpieces, both of them portrayed that we were suddenly going to have transgender people everywhere, and we're going to have like the most woke anything in Europe ever. It made no sense, because that's not who the candidate was. The candidate wasn't that at all. But my point is that he didn't let that. Peter Magyar knew the entire sphere under which Orban had controlled the population. So basically what he did was he used the system he had in front of him to win the system. And that's what I think that when it comes to opposition to Republicans, and especially MAGA Republicans, I have this theory about like playing by the rules, or the lack of ruthlessness in the opposition, that when you're up against a completely ruthless, rule-breaking, law-breaking, felon, criminal rapist, you got to think differently, And for instance, if Ukrainians thought about war in a straightforward on-off switch like that, we would suddenly be speaking Russian here. I would be in captivity. All of this would be over. We would not be having this conversation. But everyone here wakes up every day with what do I got to do different today to deal with the overwhelming incoming aggression that's coming? And I think that sort of mentality is what I keep wanting to relay back when I talk to my American audience on Substack or Twitter. I say, did you have drones hit your house today? No. Then you got a lot more going for you than I do. So please get up today, Be ruthless in some different way, and take nothing for granted. But like Peter Magyar did, though, go into those areas where you think you don't have an audience and try to see if you can build a conversation with people. Because as Plattner has been saying, and I think he got my attention with saying this, your neighbors got ripped off. Your MAGA neighbor got lied to. Your MAGA neighbor got used by their biases, and they're feeling really bad right now. Go talk to them as neighbors.
Well,
and I think that's part of the Peter Magyar approach could be found in some of that effort.
Well, so Andrea, are you going to be Andrea Miller? Are you going to be reaching out to Marjorie Taylor Greene, or is that a step too far?
Again, our audience is voters of color. That is who we work with. That is who we support. And for our election work, no. For our advocacy work, yes. We reach out to everybody who holds an elected office, who has the ability to vote the way we need them to. So it's kind of the law of bigger numbers. So we have a lot of voters of color. There are very few elected members at the federal level and at the state level. So everybody who's holding office, yeah, we're talking to all of them.
Okay, well, I have this fantasy that Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to go meet with John Ossoff, and they're going to talk about the Vogtle nuclear plant, which is bankrupting the state of Georgia. When that happens, as they say, the Messiah will have arrived. Howie Hawkins, a couple of words from you, and then we'll go to Mike to take it back to Andrea. And then we're going to go for at least a short time. We want to talk strictly about Ukraine. But go ahead, Howie.
Well, I would just add about proportional representation. We don't only have to focus on that bill in the House, the Fair Representation Act. Since 2000, when we had two jurisdictions that use ranked choice voting, we've been winning this reform. We're up to over 50 jurisdictions, from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon, and including two states, Maine and Alaska. And a lot of those reforms are proportional ranked choice voting, which is important because then you get proportional representation. If you leave it at single district, single member district, ranked choice voting, it's still a winner take all system that underrepresents minorities. And the other thing about proportional representation, a lot of places where it's been implemented, it's been a remedy for proven racial discrimination in the way districting or city councils are set up. Sometimes it's district elections, sometimes it's at large. But in the case of East Point, Michigan, it was a remedy for underrepresentation of African Americans. Albany, California, it was for Asians. Palm Desert, California, it was for Latinos. And just a couple months ago, Newburgh, New York, was faced with a lawsuit from Blacks and Latinos, and they've gone to proportional ranked choice voting so that the Black and Latino people in Newburgh get representation. So this is something we're winning, and I think to build the kind of political support we need to get this passed at the federal level, we can win it at our city level and in our states.
Wow, good for you, Howie. And we need to see more on that. And of course, we'll be discussing it further as we go forward. But there's got to be some answer to this insanity of the repeal of the Voting Rights Act. I mean, so much blood was shed to get the Voting Rights Act in place for good reason, that there's got to be an answer. And, to me, the surprise realignment of the Hispanic vote in Texas is really, really, I think, a bellwether. Mike, and then we'll go back to Andrea. Then I want to do a brief session just on Ukraine, and then we'll go to Lynn Feinerman for our bridge here, and then KARL GROSSMAN has joined us, and we're going to jump over with KEVIN KAMPS to energy issues, including nukes in space.
Harvey,
Okay, Mike Hurst, go ahead. Yeah.
Hetty had a report on Minnesota if you want to get to her sometime.
Oh, well, I didn't see Hetty. Did you raise your hand?
She said you called her.
Yes, I did. Andrew, can you stay with us 1 minute? We want to get a report from Minnesota, and then we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Ukraine, and then to Lynn Feinerman. Hetty, tell us what the latest is in Minnesota.
Okay, I was doing something else. Let me share. Where can I share?
Well, you got, looks like a gas station behind you.
No, that's the George Floyd
Okay.
Memorial, and I need to share.
Okay, well, yes, there we go.
Okay, so you wanted the latest in Minnesota. I think people would be interested that we had 4 Twin Cities leaders accepting the Profile and Courage Award in their response to ICE. So you have a Islamic Association of North America. Haven Watch was the organization that has placed itself in front of the detention center at in St. Paul, helping folks that are coming out of that. COPAL is a Latino Power and Action Group. And then the superintendent from Columbia Heights Public School, where that little 5-year-old had been taken by ICE. So, ICE is still very much in the resistance is still very much in people's minds. May Day, so I'm from St. Cloud, Minnesota. We had about 100 people there. So I'm showing a series of slides here And for people who are on the radio, I have a slide here that says fair wages now with a panda showing 86.47, and people can look into that. The other slide was there's so many interesting posters that have come up. I mean, Minnesota is full of artists, but the resistance theme was very, very strong during May Day. We have folks, the rebel loon that is the state bird was out in force. You have the puppet theater, Hearts of the Beast puppet theater that have put in so much interesting pieces. So Ice Out, again, very much the theme of May Day. You had a whole lot of whistles, again, remember whistles, and your iPhone was part of the resistance. There's a fabulous picture here that I'm showing in terms of a huge tractor trying to abolish ICE by sucking up all the ICE vehicles. Trends are here forever, yes. Aztec dances and prints, puppets were out there. And then you have the Attorney General, our friend Keith Ellison, definitely having fun at May Day. I am trying to get a hold of him and Ilhan Omar, but they are so busy having fun, I guess. This was important. One of the exhibits that were coming through the parade was, it says, Sacred Ground, Not Mining Bound, Lakota Land Stands in Lakota Hands. And then the last slide I thought you'd be interested in, you have a veteran saying, stop these wars, but there was a little old white man with a fiddle, and around his neck is, don't nuke our rivers, shut down Monticello, Perry Island reactors. And I thought you'd like that.
I do. I spent a lot of time there, as you know, Hetty,
Right.
putting those reactors, and they're still open, but we got a lot of windmills built.
Yeah.
Beautiful report, Hetty. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. And keep our finger on the pulse there in Minnesota. That's great. Andrea Miller, do you want to give us a wrap on the Voting Rights Act and your organizing, and then we'll go to Chris and Howie to talk a little about Ukraine. Then the Lynn Feinerman and KARL GROSSMAN has joined us with KEVIN KAMPS to go nuclear. But go ahead, Andrea, please.
Well, I am getting ready to leave you because we've got our phone banks up for the Georgia primary. So we are urging people and inviting you, please come join our phone banks. As we found in Virginia, in order to win an election, it is all about turnout. And one of the other reasons why campaigns and parties tend not to call Black and brown voters is, number one, we're not Democrats. And number two, so many people are inconsistent voters. Georgia has 2.4 million registered Black voters. 590,000 of them are consistent voters. So what we have found and why we win so many elections is we go after the inconsistent voters and we invite them to come and vote again. Because as voters periodically tell us, you are the only call we have gotten this election. And one of the things we need to be very, very aware of, the other side, Republicans, have figured out that the Democrats are not calling Black voters. And in Virginia, in our redistricting effort, it was literally at the very end, they waited too late, but they started calling Black voters. So in the South, in many instances, the Black voters are not the majority, but in all instances, in every Southern state, these were slave states, and they still have a very large Black voting population. Well, it has the ability to vote. Many of them don't exercise it. And what we will really be seeing with LA is people will be thrown off the rolls more frequently. And I know Greg Alice will be on next week. Greg will be talking about that. And we need to be honest when we register people, and we need to say, I'm registering you to vote today. If you do not vote consistently, we will be back in 3 years, but maybe in 3 years, you won't be able to register and vote.
Well, thank you. That was a mouthful, Andrea. And we also need to discuss at some point, Greg will do it, of course. Greg Powers will be with us next week, along with MV Romana, that the attack on women and the ability of women to register is a very, very big deal. And we will go deep into that next week.
Yes.
So,
Black voters and women are what won in Virginia. Black voters and women.
absolutely. Okay, thank you so much for that, Andrea Miller. Always, it's great to have you. Mike, I want to go real quick because I know, Chris, it's in the middle of the night for you. Can you give us a quick update on Ukraine, followed by Howie? As I said, I had a lunch last week, and somebody I really love offered me 100 to 1 that Ukraine was going to lose. And I said, there's one word you need to remember. It's Vietnam. And am I off base with that? Lynn Feinerman, can you wait a minute? We will have you in a minute, please. Thank you so much. Chris?
No, I think that's a very important thing because, for instance, when I have friends who are old enough to be Vietnam veterans or, veterans of Iraq War, only a few of them are coherent enough as human beings to say we were invaders. We were the invaders, period. And home court advantage is everything. 2,500 years ago, Sun Tzu explicitly laid that problem out, strategically no less. If you have to have 2 carts to wage your war, then you're in trouble. And when you look at what America has invested its war, what I, as an anti-war activist, spend all my time griping about, although Russia is not that far from us to the east, it's still not their territory. It's still not their home. They're not fighting for their home. They're fighting to take something that's not theirs. And so people who predicted against this, if you had put that wager on my table in February 2022 when I was driving around this country when it had not yet started, I would have still gone very much in the into the category for Ukraine because I had talked to Ukrainians and I'd been studying the problem from a distance, but I hadn't lived in Ukraine. I hadn't visited Ukraine. But now that I've been here and I've been around Ukrainians every day for 4 years, I get why Russia hasn't defeated Ukrainians. Partially, it's the support of the West. The fact that Ukraine was able to, thank God, successfully build very quick strategic, and I'm going to not use the word alliance because alliance is a formal declaration that is a big difference. But to build these support systems on the tragedy that was in front of us, like Bucha. I was in Bucha the first week after the Russians were thrown out. I was in Izum 2 weeks after. I've stood at both of those mass graves. So I know what has happened here. And Russia lost in the first months for the same reason Donald Trump is losing right now. Is the FSB had plenty of information here. They had great human intelligence gathering, signals intelligence gathering, dominant hardware, everything, but they didn't have a culture of honesty around Putin. And so you could not go up to him and say a range of types of things that should have been said in a different environment where had they been honest with him, there's a chance they could have defeated the country enough to have a different reality than the one we live in right now. But as this war continues to go on, you look at the economy in Russia and you look at the economy here. The economy here is actually stable. It's not great, but it has stability in it. The banking system has stability in it. I have friends of mine who are economic experts, and they're very thankful. They're Ukrainians, they're very thankful that we're at least in the situation we are now, They know a lot of it has to do with outside support to make sure that it didn't collapse. So there's that. But what has happened is Ukraine has been able to strengthen things that have been corrupted out during the last, well, actually even through USSR days. And increasingly, what is replacing the old rotten system is a modern system. In some cases, so modern that it's ahead of many countries in the world. So the use of computer systems here has been one of the news bits. And I am a web company owner for 27 years. I come from poor family, poor life. So I know how much a computer skill can transform economics into my pocket. And I knew that here when I first met the first people I met was that IT could really change how this country operates. But
Well,
it had to survive. It had to
what we're
survive.
getting, Chris, what we're getting, the impression I'm getting, I'm seeing these videos. I don't know how accurate they are, but
Sure.
what I'm seeing, and I think we're all seeing, is this image that Ukraine somehow is a light year ahead of the Russians in
Yes.
terms of drone warfare. Now,
Yes.
is that accurate? And how did that happen, for God's sakes? Because it's made all
Yeah, sure. Think about what Pete Hegseth is dealing with right now when it comes to drone warfare. The arrogance that keeps them from asking the guy with the cards to get any help. Okay? That is exactly what happened with Russia as well.
It's
That
amazing.
information stopgap right there, the thing that would take a normal leader and say, hey, Mr. President, yeah, I'm your head general. I have advice for you. You know, okay, all of that's been stripped both in the White House and in the Kremlin. You have yes men there, and yes men are causing them to lose what they have. So that's the biggest thing that I think has been a benefit to Ukraine, is that the corruption in the Kremlin was bigger than the corruption that was here.
So is the impression you get from Zelensky is that he's a smart, progressive technocrat who is smarter and more progressive than Putin, and that is determining a lot of the fate of this war. Is that accurate?
I think that's onto something. Let me say it differently. Do you remember a year ago there were protests happening in July over changes in two corruption agencies here, NABU and STAPU? For 7 days while I was in Mykolaiv, I finally get out of town and protests break out. And in 7 days, they reversed that. Now, I wish I had placed a bet right before that with a Ukrainian who called Zelensky a dictator. I go, really? Yeah, Dima. And I had to say it in Ukrainian, but like, you suffer from policy paralysis due to populism, right? I mean, and I basically explained policy paralysis. And when you want everyone to agree in a populist setting, you're not going to get that. And he goes, well, yeah. I said, that's the exact opposite of dictatorship. Oh, okay. He's a small businessman. He doesn't think in geopolitical terms per se, right? But I said, isn't it true that like every decision has to go back what the people may think, or well, yeah, that's true. Well, look at what Zelensky did every time Trump went up and said, well, you're going to do the following or we're not going to give you any aid. And he goes, okay, this is, I hear you. And he repeats back the demand to the United States, right? You want to do following. Yes, okay, good. We'll put it to referendum. Wait, what? Every single time he did that was brilliant because he gave them the, okay, I hear you. Here you go. Now I will take it back to my people and we'll put it to referendum. That is not what happens in the Kremlin. If that doesn't tell us exactly what the two battles are, then we don't understand what the battles are.
Or the White House. So, all right. So,
especially the White House. Yeah, exactly.
I'm
The
sure
White House is the autocracy.
Many of the rest of you are seeing these Ukrainian videos that show the destruction of the Russian infrastructure and army. And then you have to wonder, how accurate are these videos, or they're just feeding us, BS? But boy, they're very convincing. In fact, today in the New York Times, there's a big article saying that the Ukrainians blew up a refinery in Russia, and the ecological fallout is so severe that people in the city can't breathe. It's like LA in the 50s. I mean, they're having black rain. Is that accurate? Is that true?
Yes, and I would say in future segments, if you guys ever want to have me on to discuss the disinformation and the sphere that you see versus what's on the ground. I'd be glad to help you with that, because
All right,
it's
we'll do that.
one of the things living here gives me, that I go a little bit nuts when I read the internet. I go, wait, what? We've been wiped off the map? Yeah. No, we see plumes and clouds of damage, but the city's still here. The country's still here, right? So we see this all the time, where what's said about us is not in line with us. But back to what you
Okay.
said about Russia, real quick about Russia, is that the sanctions, as we see it under the Trump administration, are failing. They're too easily decided one way or the other the next day. So Ukraine has a different way of doing the sanctions, which is basically eliminating the ability to engage in war by taking out the supplying targets.
Okay. Listen, it's fascinating. We will have in 2 weeks, if you pull together a team, we'll have a deeper dive into Ukraine
Sure,
because
of course.
it's critical. This is not some side issue,
No,
obviously.
not at all. It's
Ukrainians
definitely
win.
not.
It's a very big deal. Howie, do you want to jump in? Then we'll go to Lynn Feineman and then nukes in space.
Well, on the question of dictatorship in Ukraine, it's worth noting that Reporters Without Borders last week came out with their 2026 Press Freedom Index, and Ukraine leaped over the United States as having more press freedom. So put that in your database.
Amen.
As far as Ukraine losing the war, I mean, I've been following this closely. I was in Ukraine for a month in 2024, and Ukraine is not about to defeat the Russian army within occupied Ukraine, but it has fought Russia to a standstill. In the first year of the war, Russia, they ran, almost got Kyiv, and were all over the place. In that year, Ukraine pushed them out of half of the land that Russia had seized. And since then, it's been a standstill. The Institute for the Study of War, or maybe it was another institute, but anyway, looks at this closely. 3 years, they've lost hundreds of thousands of troops and all, their military materiel, and they've only gained 1.5% more of Ukrainian land, and they've been losing some of that land this year. Their spring offensive is failing. So I would say Ukraine may not be winning the war, but they've got the strategic initiative. They're stopping this offensive, and that's what the Vietnamese did. They lost most of the battles, but they won the war.
Well, let's talk about
Taliban
that.
did. And that's what the Ukrainians are doing to the Russians. They're bleeding them out in the battlefields. The Russians attack. The Ukrainians are not attacking, but they're wiping out the Russians when they do attack.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Listen, I'm in 2 weeks, come back. I want to devote a deep dive because the Ukrainian war is incredibly important. It's similar to what happened in Hungary. I mean, if the Ukrainians can preserve themselves in the face of this assault from Russia, that is a world-changing reality. And it seems to be that's true also technologically, which is
Yeah. Well, let
very
me add this before I go real quick. First off, this is one of my most precious things is my press badge. So Howie, thank you for acknowledging that about press, because this is my first one from 27 years ago at Pacifica. No one tells me how to do my job here. No one interferes with me doing my job, period. So press freedom means something to us here. But there's really a bigger thing about what the arc of Ukraine is about that I think is important, especially for me
very
as a
quickly,
progressive.
because we got time.
Of course, of course,
We'll
of
come
course.
back.
So the thing that people have to understand is what Ukraine is trying to do is move up the ladder of non-corruption and into the life we all believe we should be having as Americans, progressive people, especially about the right of liberty and right of independence. And what Russia is trying to do with Hungary, Slovakia, Donald Trump is pull all these countries down into the quagmire of corruption, and basically increase the autocratic world over the democracy world. And Ukraine is in that other category. It's literally what all of it shows is that from 2014 on, they were literally on this upper trajectory away from that era of corruption. And the more we really understand that, we go, wait a minute, I want to fight on the side that's good, then you want to fight on the side that Ukraine is currently fighting on. And I think that's the most important thing to understand about those two different worlds.
Come back in 2 weeks. We'll put
Of course, man.
together your own team. We'll do it in the first hour, so you won't have to stay up to the middle of the night, Howie. you'll be with us. And you can also pull together a pool to take that 100-to-1 odds, because I'll take it any day of the week. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Howie. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mila, for getting Chris. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay. Thank you. I want to mention, as Andrea did, next week, we're going to have Greg Palast in the first hour, and then MV Romana in the second. We have in the wings Karl Grossman and Kevin Kamps to talk nuclear, but first we have a report from Lynn Feinerman. Mila Reeson, can you introduce Lynn here, please? Mila?
Has Lynn disappeared?
No,
She
Lynn's
doesn't want to
here.
be
Lynn's
on the
with us.
screen. She just wants to talk.
Oh, okay. Well, Lynn is going to give us a couple of minutes to report on a group of women from the Greek Call who met to talk about this horrible rape culture. And so take it away, Lynn. But you have to unmute. You're muted.
Yes,
There you go.
we met yesterday, and it was just a really remarkable get together. Not only did we get to know each other much more deeply, and it was nourishing, not just from the point of issues, but from the point of personal interaction and becoming friends, vis-a-vis the whole idea of contacting your neighbors. But we also came up with a couple of very, very interesting ideas that we may develop for campaigns. As I think everybody knows, there has been a huge kerfuffle in the news regarding the so-called Rape Academy. And of course, the discussion about it devolved into how many exactly men, males, whatever, visited this Rape Academy, and then if it was shelved and stuffed under the carpet. So we brought it back out, and we spoke about it from the viewpoint of who we are personally and what our experiences have been and what the actual response to it was. And that's about all I want to say, but I would like to ask Hetty Tripp to follow with any comments she might have, because Hetty was an attendee yesterday.
Eddie, you're muted.
Okay. It's an important conversation, and what we will come up with, I think the goal is that we need to really unpack or unpeel this onion around rape culture, and then bring it to Greek. Would you think that's a good way of putting it, Lynn?
Yes, one of our thoughts was to bring it in a larger way to Greek, and not have 10 minutes allotted for something which is thousands of years old, tens of thousands of years old, deeply destructive and disabling to women, and which people find it very hard to confront for some odd reason. And so, yes, it is very important, Hetty, to bring it here and to give it the time it deserves. Thank you.
Okay.
Power and misogyny are not part of the democratic society. Thank you.
Mike Hurst, did you want to jump in here? We still have 62 people with us. We have the longest attention span in the United States. Mike?
Yeah, really quickly, I'd like to thank Lynn, Hetty, Mila for bringing this to our attention and keeping it front and center. We will not make progress as a society or even be a civilized society as long as more than half of our population lives in fear of being attacked at any given time. It's just not It's just not sustainable. It's not civilized, and we can't afford that. We can't allow it to happen. And Sunny, Michelle Anonymous has had her hand up for a while. So if we can call on her and then move on to nukes in space.
Right, right. We've got Carl and Kevin in the wings and a whole bunch of radioactive stuff. But Michelle, please, and Lynn, again, thank you. Hetty, thank you. It's great to hear this, and we will accommodate as best we possibly can. Go ahead,
Hey,
Michelle.
you need to acknowledge
And
Mimi
Myla.
Gilman as well.
Who?
Mimi
Gurman.
Yeah,
yes.
Mimi. Great, our
Mhm.
poet laureate.
Thank you.
Okay, Michelle,
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Hetty.
Yes, I had this question came to my thought while Chris was talking about Ukraine, because just this past weekend I saw a headline that uh, Africans were saying that Russian corporations or whatever were coming, saying they were going to give them jobs in Russia, and then they go there and they're forced to fight in the battle against Ukraine instead.
I saw that. Yes, it's outrageous. One of the other things I have never seen as a historian is that there apparently is a marketplace in the Russian army at the front. Howie, you've probably seen this, where the guys who wind up, and they are all guys pretty much, are forced to pay bribes to their officers to not go into battle. And that there's also, and this was true in Vietnam, that a lot of the officers in the Russian army are being killed by their own troops. In Vietnam, it was called fragging. But I don't know what the Russian word is for fragging, but it seems to be going on like crazy at the Russian front among the Russian army. Michelle,
Yeah.
is that something you had in mind?
Yeah, she's muted. The only thriving business in Russia right now are funeral homes, literally.
It's unbelievable. It's just you got to remember, Ukraine has 30 million people, and that's maybe a quarter of the population of Russia, but nonetheless, it's 30 million people. I don't know who thinks they're going to march over and conquer a country that's technologically advanced with 30 million people. I mean, Howie, you've been there. Does it strike you that Ukraine is a country that could be easily conquered?
No, the people there, Ukrainian national consciousness has really grown. It's been a struggle. I mean, Russia spent 4 centuries, colonizing and then basically enslaving Ukrainians as serfs.
Kiev
And
was the original uniter of Russia. It emanated out of Kiev. That Ukraine was the original uniter.
well, the Kievan Rus, I mean, Moscow claims that is their lineage, but the Ukrainians have had their own national identity for centuries.
Right.
And
Right. Yeah.
it's really come to the fore in since independence, which passed in a referendum by 92%. So no, the Ukrainians, they're going to fight for their freedom. And
Right.
it's you know, whoever told Putin he could, they had the soldiers that were headed for Kyiv, the Russian soldiers, pack their parade uniforms. They thought by the third or fourth day they'd be having a military parade, and they got their ass kicked.
Yeah,
And
Were they
really.
told they'd be greeted as liberators?
Yes, right.
yeah,
They're
it's like
rose petals. Them and the
yeah,
Iraqis.
it's like what's his name, the
Cheney.
the Bush guy,
Cheney.
Rumsfeld?
Cheney. No,
no,
it's
the vice
Cheney.
president,
Rum,
Cheney. It was
not Haig,
Cheney.
Cheney. Yeah, Cheney was saying, we'd be met with flowers by the Ukrainians as their
Right.
liberator.
Well, okay. Thank you. And Michelle, thank you. And thank you, Lynn Feinerman, Hetty, and Mila. And we look forward to working on the dealing with that rape culture stuff as well. What a nightmare. So we'll work out the details and have a home here. So next on the agenda, if anybody else wants to jump in, we're going to go weirdly enough and amazingly enough. KARL GROSSMAN has been pretty much not a one-man campaign, but damn close on this issue of nukes in space. And then KEVIN KAMPS is back in Kalamazoo at the home front on the Palisades situation. I just read that really long article in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. Steve, if you've got the link to put it up on Holtec. I mean, Holtec is absolutely Alice in Wonderland in the financial world. These guys are completely out to lunch, as is this idea of nukes in space. So, Karl, Kevin, if you don't mind following Karl, um, um, the only allegory, the only thing that I support that Donald Trump has done is in the last week or so, they've really liberalized the whole legal structure around psychedelics. And when I see they're talking about nuclear power in space, there's been a confluence of the use of psychedelics in the space agency. But Karl, you've pioneered this story in the media. Tell us the latest, if you will, please, on nukes in space and what's going on, and then we'll go to Kevin in Palisades. But go ahead, please.
Well, big things are going on. NASA plans, and I put in the chat a story that was on Counterpunch, Nation of Change, other platforms. This one, the Daily Kos. It plans in 2028, which is 2 years from now, to launch a nuclear-powered rocket to Mars. And this would be an initial step to using nuclear-powered rockets in space. And my piece, and again, you can just see the link on the chat. It's connected to an announcement on March 24th headed NASA unveils initiatives to achieve America's national space policy. Meanwhile, it's not just nuclear-powered rockets being pushed, but also nuclear reactors in space. Here's a piece, if you can see the headline. This is just last week. NASA plans to put a nuclear reactor on the moon by 2030, which isn't too far away. But what would happen if the rocket that the nuclear reactor is on to be sent to the moon blows up on launch? And 1 in 100 launches of rockets screw up. Largely, they blow up if you have a reactor there. What would occur if a nuclear rocket? Well, there's been accidents in this program of the use of nuclear in space. And let me just add to this the military component. I broke the story in 1986 in The Nation magazine about how the next mission of the Challenger, set for May of '86, involved lofting a plutonium-fueled space probe. And I wrote a book about this. Here it is, The Wrong Stuff, about accidents that have happened in space with nuclear devices and the plans of NASA to expand that. And one of the elements, you want to follow the money when you do what I do as an investigative reporter. And what I connected the push for nuclear in space by NASA was Star Wars. This goes back to Reagan's Star Wars. And people didn't really pick up on this. I wrote a book on it called Weapons in Space. Michio Kaku wrote the foreword, talking about what's the basis of Star Wars, which was orbiting battle platforms. And on the orbiting battle platforms would be actual nuclear reactors, or what we call super plutonium systems, made incidentally by GE, talking about following the money. And they would provide the energy to the hypervelocity guns, the particle beams, the laser weapons on these orbiting battle platforms. Jump to today, what Trump did in his first term was to establish a space force. So now the weaponization of space, the militarization of space is firmly institutionalized. And you say, Harvey, I've been basically alone on the story. I've been. I mean, my pieces on this ever since getting it all into it 40 years ago have been selected by Project Censored again and again as the most censored stories happening. Media doesn't pick it up. I mean, space reporters, and I've written about this, are enthralled by the space program. And we know how the media, the mass media, just stays away from nuclear stories. So here you have a combination of nuclear and space and little coverage. And we're headed, in my view, to, again, there's been accidents. Among the biggest was years ago, they used plutonium to energize the satellites that were put up. And there was a big accident. A satellite didn't achieve orbit, came down, disintegrated, spreading plutonium throughout much of the world. Dr. John Goffman, he was an early, he was involved in the Manhattan Project, an early scientist involved in plutonium and so forth, an MD, as well as a physicist. He connected that SNEP 9A accident to a spike, a serious spike in lung cancer all over the planet. So this is what we're heading for. And in terms of censored, in terms of stories that people don't know about, the reckless, crazy, dangerous, indeed lethal deployment of nuclear in space, and again, there's a weapons connection, is happening now in spades.
Well, it's really, Karl, you're to be applauded for your diligence here. I mean, it's 40 years you've been writing about this. And, and here they are still trying to do this insane. I can't even begin to, Mila, you can go ahead. You can begin to comment on this. I got to watch the four-letter word thing here. It's mind-boggling to me.
Well, I just wanted to chime in and remind people that Andrew Cuomo has a financial interest in one of the companies that wants to develop a mini nuke for the moon, as you were saying, Karl. Did you know it was Cuomo, among others, who actually has a financial interest in that company to develop these mini nukes? But I was thinking about the work of Bruce Gagnon years ago. I think he brought this idea of the possibility of plutonium being used, and then an accident occurring which would result in plutonium raining down back into our atmosphere. So can you just comment for a moment about the work of Bruce Gagnon on this issue?
Well, I was there at the organizing meeting, so was Harvey, of the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. And that came after my pieces, largely in The Nation. The Nation had the guts to publish my pieces. And Bruce gave me a telephone call from Florida. He was the coordinator of the Florida Coalition for Social Justice. And a lot of this was happening down in Florida, the launches and so forth. And he said, this is in our backyard. And he committed himself to getting involved deeply, leaving the Florida Coalition and becoming the coordinator of the Global Network. And the Global Network is now international. And it's been very active with protests and so forth, and disseminating information in its newsletter about the push for nuclear in space. I did a TV documentary, incidentally, a number of years ago, which I could put on the chat. It's an hour-long documentary, received actually many awards, called Nukes in Space, the Nuclearization and weaponization of the heavens, which provides an international picture on this.
Well, it's pretty mind-boggling. And Carl, thank you so much for sticking with it and stay with us. We're going to go deeper in here. We have Kevin Kamps in Kalamazoo, and Kevin, I just came just before the show today. I read this long piece in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists about Holtec, which is the company in Camden, New Jersey that wants to restart Palisades. So I'm going to make another bet here. I'm going to take the 100-to-1 odds that Ukraine is going to resist Russia and will never be conquered by Russia. I'm also going to say that the big Palisades reactor, will never restart. I mean, if you examine, as they did in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, the nature of Holtec, these guys, these guys make the Keystone Cops look like the Gestapo. I mean, this is unreal here. Kevin, you're in the belly of the beast, and actually, I'm glad you're there. What is happening with Holtec and Palisades right now? And Lynn, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it, and we'll have you back as soon as possible. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Harvey, because, for example, I just attended a Democratic Socialists of America picnic for May Day last Saturday here in Kalamazoo. Met a guy I'd never met before. We got to talking about Palisades, and he said a friend of his who's working at Palisades right now has heard that the restart is not looking good at all, but hasten to add that the small modular reactors are very much full steam ahead. And I'd heard very similar things from another source. And it makes total sense because we're following the proceedings very closely. And Holtec has performed many self-inflicted wounds in the last 4 years since taking over at Palisades. They fried the steam generator tubes very badly. They were already bad when they showed up. They didn't do basic maintenance for 2 solid years. And so the steam generator tubes, which are very fragile, very vulnerable to chemical attack, deteriorated very quickly over that 2-year period, where they only had a handful at most of problematic tubes for years or even decades on end. All of a sudden, they had thousands of problematic tubes. And all they've done is slap on Band-Aid fixes. It's called retubing. They insert a smaller diameter tube into the other tube, and away they go. It's a real risk of a meltdown. The company's own contractor admitted that if they restart, they could only operate for about 14 months before the degradation of the tubes to the bursting point would increase exponentially. So what's incredible is they've spent so much money, $300 million of state grants.
Now, this is public money, $300 million?
It's all public money. Holtec has no skin in the game. It's other people's money, opium. And our expert nuclear engineer, Arnie Gunderson, says opium, other people's money, is very addictive. So they are taking huge risks with this restart scheme. The latest safety scandal has to do more with the interface between the reactor vessel closure head and the pipes that come off it, things called safe ends and pressurizer nozzles. They've dabbled with the metallurgy. They've lost all documentation. In fact, they destroyed the documentation under Entergy, the previous owner, in 2022 over our protests, because we already heard that they were going to restart Palisades. So we intervened legally and said, you can't destroy documents. You're talking about restarting this reactor. And
well, what are the documents? Weren't the documents filed jointly with the Epstein files?
Yeah, I mean, they did destroy documents, and now that they don't have the documentation of what the welding was on these interfaces from the past, they're saying, well, here are the designs. They didn't build it according to design. They added to the design. They changed the designs. And then they did welding work during the last 4 years without any permission from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission because it was decommissioning phase. not operational phase, there are no regulations. And Holtec took full advantage of this regulation-free zone called decommissioning to do whatever it wanted, even if it was wrong, even if it was injurious to the plant. And now they're asking forgiveness because they never asked for permission now that it's back in operational phase. So they're playing fast and loose. And I wanted to give a couple updates about Holtec. It appears that their initial public offering is back on track. They were supposed to do it last January, but with all these problems at Palisades, they've postponed. But we have lots of evidence now. A major restructuring of leadership is happening at Holtec. Like, they're changing the sheets and saying everything's fine now. All the problems were due to those earlier guys. We got rid of them. So here's our new team. It's all going to be great now. And another thing they're doing is they're restructuring all their holding companies. It's like a Rube Goldberg machine of limited liability corporations and other holding companies. And it appears they're going forward with the attempt to raise $10 billion with a B in private capital, mostly to entirely for SMR 300, small modular reactor deployment, beginning at Palisades, then up north at Big Rock Point, but across the US and around the world. They have a proposal for 20 SMRs in Ukraine alone. So more targets on combat front lines in Ukraine is what they're proposing. So incredibly enough, Holtec is completely, entirely privately held by one man. His name is Krishna Singh. He's the founder, he's the chief executive officer, and he's the chairman of the board. And apparently he wants some shareholders involved. And so my hope and prayer is that if there's any regulation left at the Securities and Exchange Commission, his very bad behavior may catch up to him quickly under this new arrangement, but I guess we'll see about that.
It's mind-boggling. I mean, is there no end? So here's the question, Kevin. What are the odds at this point that the old Palisades, the big Palisades, the Corvair Pinto up on blocks in the front yard is ever going to restart? And will that have, what kind of impact will that have on the proposed restart of 3 Mile Island, Duane Arnold, etc., in terms of the old reactors, not using the sites for small reactors, but the old reactors themselves?
Well, the restart is already 2 years behind schedule because in 2022, Holtec said they could get it restarted by mid-2024. And it looks like many months to go before they get all the approvals they need from the NRC. Even though the NRC is a rubber stamp agency, they still go through the motions. They still check the boxes. They're going to grant approval. So it's at least many months away. If they step away from restart and admit they're not going to do it, then that would be a huge blow to Duane Arnold in Iowa, to 3 Mile Island Unit 1 in Pennsylvania, because they are following the Holtec precedent, even in terms of the licensing proceedings. So we're hopeful that this house of cards will fall before they restart, because once they restart, the risks are uncharted territory at this point. But we're so worried about the small modular nuclear reactors at Palisades that we've organized a major event. It's coming up quickly. It begins on May 15th. We're going to have a retreat out at Circle Pine Center in southwestern Michigan, which is a historic campground. It played a big role in the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement. It was a refuge for people escaping McCarthyism. And it has some pretty amazing anti-nuclear bona fides all its own. But we're going to gather out there. We're going to educate the movement about small modular nuclear reactors. We're going to strategize against them. And then on Monday, it's a long weekend out at Circle Pines. And then on Monday, we're coming back into Kalamazoo, 35 miles downwind of Palisades, for a day of action. We're going to have the Great Lakes Brass Band. We're going to march around the heart of downtown Kalamazoo. We're going to hold a rally and press conference on the steps of City Hall. We've already got a former vice mayor, the current vice mayor, United Farm Workers Foundation has said they'll send a representative to speak. And that evening, we're going to go to the city commission and during the public comment time, speak out against Palisades. The message is Kalamazoo and friends speak out against Holtec schemes at Palisades Nuclear. So it's going to be fun. We're going to get a little time out in a very beautiful wooded lakeshore at Circle Pines and try to figure out how to fight these SMNRs. Holtec is saying this is their model for global build out here at Palisades.
Whoa, Karl Grossman, you have had experience shutting down Shoreham and are close with Indian Point. How do you see the clear likelihood the Palisades will not restart impacting the rest of the nuclear industry?
Well, it would be just outrageous. I mean, disastrous. However, considering the Trump administration's push, and it's not just Trump's extreme commitment to nuclear power, Democratic governors all over the United States are pushing nuclear, including the governor of Michigan. So I'd say it's 50-50. And I think the work of KEVIN KAMPS and the rest of the folks at Don't Waste Michigan are critical. You mentioned about Shoreham and Long Island. It took years, 2 decades of grassroots opposition to stop the Shoreham nuclear plant and actually 6 to 10 others from being constructed on Long Island. And that's what's needed in Michigan. That's what's needed throughout the country and indeed throughout the world. And key to it is obviously action and also public education. I've been a journalism professor for 50 years, and I must say, when it comes to nuclear power, the press has been out to lunch.
And dinner. We still got 54 people with us. We're about to end here. I want to emphasize, I want to thank Steve Caruso for engineering, Mike Hirsch for pulling things together, Myra Reeson for helping produce, Tatanka Bricka for running the KPFK board. This has been phenomenal. Oh, yes. Mike has reminded us that for the first time, and they're using AI as this big excuse, this sort of bottomless pit that they have to fill with nuclear electricity to justify all this new demand. The gubernatorial candidate, the favorite to win in New Mexico, is Deb Haaland. She's indigenous and she was the Interior Secretary. She has broken the ground and said that as governor, which I hope to God she becomes, she will not allow AI centers to be built except with solar. No one has mentioned this, and you see these giant pictures of these warehouses that they want to make into AI. They never have solar panels on them. It's ridiculous. And so Deb Haaland has said that if she is governor of New Mexico, she will require all the AI centers to have solar panels. And I saw a piece, and I'm not sure of the credibility, but it seemed all right, that basically says more communities now are fighting AI and data centers than are fighting windmills, wind turbines. So clear, and we're seeing a lot of grassroots opposition to AI and data centers. It's a big deal. Vina Colley, you're in the belly of the beast in Portsmouth. We just got a couple more minutes, but want to get in you with Kevin and Karl. Go ahead, please.
My concern is Piketon has been making the fuel through high-assay, low-enriched uranium since 1923, and 2023. I'm sorry, I have laryngitis. And we're making the fuel for the small modular reactors, and I don't hear anybody nationally doing anything about it. And they've been doing it since 2023. And now they're talking about putting 13 small modular reactors here, and Trump's behind it all. And plus a new gas power plant here. And we have the highest cancer in the nation for childhood cancer. And nobody nationally is screaming about it. I've been trying to get
except the grief calls, and we let you come on, and that's good. It's important. You're in Piketon, Ohio, which is down at the bottom there of the state, and it's been a nightmare all along. There's a very, very good documentary about it, and made by Dwayne Pullman. And here we are. Keep coming with us, Violet. We need you to keep reminding us about this horrific
Yep.
place. And you do point out the HALEU fuel is just a very short step from nuclear weaponry. I mean, this
Yes, it
whole
is.
idea that there's a separation has been dismissed at Piketon. The fuel you're making there is 100% renewable, usable for nuclear weapons. So thank you for that. Vina, do you want to jump in with anything else? We're almost done here.
I just want to say that nationally, we need people to look at us. We are in production now. It's not that we're going to start it up. We have been on production since 2023, and we need help in the community, and it's going to take a national effort to stop this.
Well, thank you much. But we always remember that in the year 1974, Richard Nixon got on national TV in the midst of the oil embargo and said there'd be 1,000 commercial reactors in the United States by the year 2000. And in the year 2000, there are 104. Now we're down to 94. And the price comparison between small reactors and restarting big reactors versus renewables is ridiculous. It's not even close. Anybody that cares at all about money would never go with a reactor as opposed to renewables at this point. Very quickly, Nicole, then we'll go to Karl and Kevin. And this has been an astounding 2 hours. Once again, we really appreciate it. Next week, we will have Greg Palast and MV Romano with us. Go ahead, Nicole, and then Karl, and then Kevin.
What people are finding, like in Dade County, Miami-Dade County, uh, they're having like AI, the AI centers, popping up like overnight. People are not aware that how they got bought and stuff like that. And another one is a super center in Palm Beach County. It's going to be 2 million square feet AI center, and that thing is gonna like use up like millions of gallons of water a day, and it's gonna have a noise at 24/7 that will like vibration go through the ground, and it cannot be stopped. It's gonna affect all the animals and everything around there.
Well, we're going to have a session next week on these AI and data centers, and we also noticing that the nature of the architecture is interchangeable with detention centers for ICE. And so, if they don't finish them as data centers, they'll just use them to lock people up and to make the essentially concentration camps out of with alligator Auschwitz there in the Everglades. Thank you for that, Nicole. That very good point. Glad you brought that up. So we'll deal with that next week as well. Karl, you want to give us a wrap on weapons in space, and then Kevin, you'll take us out from Palisades.
Yeah, I just, again, I want to repeat, organize, organize, organize. It should be put on the agenda of every anti-nuclear group. And I just put in the link. Again, it's been around now for decades. The link to the global network against weapons and nuclear power in space. Bruce Gagnon is based in Maine. They put out an excellent newsletter, Space Alert, with all kind of information about what is going on. But again, it's action which is necessary. I mean, this is real suicide stuff.
It's amazing. And Ray Lutz, who really knows his way around the nuclear issue, has just ordered your book, Karl. So you can count your royalties and next week. And Ray, it's great to see you. And we're going to talk more next week with Greg about the Voting Rights Act. Kevin Kamps, you want to take us out here?
Yeah, I just want to encourage folks to consider, I know it's short timing now, but consider coming to this event in Michigan from May 15th to 18th. Go to the Don't Waste Michigan link. Send me an email at kevin.kamps@proton.me, and I can give you more information, help you get registered. We've got some tremendous speakers who are going to be presenting, and we're going to strategize how to fight back, not just in Michigan, but across the Great Lakes Basin against small modular nuclear reactors.
Kevin, are you going to stream it online at all?
Yeah, the educational days, Friday and Saturday, are going to be streamed. It looks like the strategy day on Sunday is not going to be, just to try to protect our strategy. So,
Okay. Well, Kevin, as a graduate of the University of Michigan, it's great to have you in Kalamazoo. We appreciate it. You and Roger Rappaport with Mike Keegan in Monroe and many, many others. So, listen, everybody, this has been another great session. Thank you, Andrea Miller and
Rodney Sadler.
Rodney Sadler, that's right, and our Ukrainian correspondents, Howie and Chris. And boy, what a session this has been. Next week again, my buddy Greg Palast and MV Romana. And thank you again, Carl, Kevin, and Ray. It's good to see you. We'll talk to you again next week. No nukes, everybody. We'll see you in Solartopia. Thanks, Steve and Mike and Mila. And wow, fantastic. No nukes, everybody. Take care.